Hello everybody, my name is GrimReaper2458. First of all, apologies about I'm getting over a cold, and I haven't been talking as much lately, so I don't really have enough developed voice at the moment. Today what we're going to be doing is taking a look on how to make one of the most basic integrations I've seen, and one of the most popular too, especially back in the day, which is a Strayven. So let's get into it. What the basic idea of a Strayven is a Strife, preferably a beat-up one like this, and a Raven, like a beat-up one like this, and we're going to combine it so that we get a really cool looking blaster. We get an extra magwell, thumbhole stock, and a carry handle and some tack rail stuff. I've made about, I want to say 5 Stravens. All very different from each other, and so I feel like I have enough skill to talk about how to do this, but you can always choose to cut however you want. This is just how I cut blasters and how I do it. So step 1 of this is going to be stripping all these blasters, or these 2 blasters, of their screws and parts. I've done the liberty of taking out all the screws on both of these, and we're going to take a look at the Strife first. Now we're just going to need the shells from these right now, but I'd recommend keeping every single part in the blasters. I've taken the screws out of this, or taken the wire out of this before, because it was really crummy and I didn't want to deal with it now, because I had to wash the shell too, so I put all of the stuff back, because the shell was in really bad condition before. So I'm going to strip this of all of its parts, and we're going to move on to the Raven. Got the Strife all stripped up, except for this rail attachment that I just saw. Now it's important to keep all your parts in a bag. I like to reuse, these are Boulder, but like Ziploc bags, because after a few projects, they can survive a couple projects, and this one actually held a Strayven before this one. And we're gonna strip this Raven. Hopefully it's not too sticky when it comes to the barrel section. Ravens are always notorious for being hard to take apart. And of course it's solvent welded. Cool. So what we're going to need from this Raven is only the magwell piece, this guy, the jam clearing door, or the mag release, the jam door, the rail attachment, the pin with that, which I'm going to get out with some pliers, and the switch here. Everything else you can save, or you can choose to save, because I often need Raven parts, and if someone else needs Raven parts, I can just give them some. So I'm going to strip this entire thing, and yeah, I'll get back to you on when the shell's done, and we'll go from there. Alright, so we got all the parts of the Raven out. Had to get the Dremel, unfortunately, to take the muzzle out, but that's how it is with some of the green Ravens. They have a solvent welded barrel on them for whatever reason. So we're going to go into marking the Strife and the Raven, because you actually need to cut both of the blasters. Now if you learned anything from this Raven, if you remember, if you've seen this video, they kept this part and all of the bit here, and it made it so the Raven was raised really high and this was not lined up, and it made it look like a blaster sitting on top of another blaster. So we're going to correct that with this. And if you watched that video, you also know, possibly, that I talked about briefly where I cut stripes when it comes to Stravens. And we're going to go over cutting Ravens also. So what you're going to do is you can either take out a pencil, a pen, or a Sharpie. I prefer to go Actually, for this we're going to use a Sharpie. I prefer to go with a pencil because I can always erase, but I've also done 1,000 of these, so I genuinely know what I need to do. So we're going to take the line that is raised right here, and we're going to keep the same line as the baseline here. So we're going to cut all along here to this line. Not this, that just slipped off. I'm going to continue that through here. And then right here. And then the front here. So we're going to cut this entire top off. And we're going to also cut this bit here, and I'll explain why we cut the top of this off in a second. So if you also remember from the Strayven that I pulled up here, it was missing these 3 little triangle lines, or triangle holes. And if you don't want them, you don't have to do this extensive of cutting that I'm going to show later, if you don't really care about them. But if you do care about them, also, with lowering the blaster, you're going to want to make it so that this doesn't get in the way of anything in here. You can also line your shells up when you're doing this to make sure that you're not screwing up anywhere. And with cutting the top of this off, we also get more room to fill in some things. So we got both of those sides done. We're going to move on to our Raven here. So we're not flat topping this Raven, and we're not making the stock bigger or anything. We're doing basic cuts. So what I'm going to do actually is not cut around the battery door for now. We're going to do this and keep this little detail for the going into the trigger guard piece there, and then we'll cut around that. So we're going to remove that from the Raven, and we're going to remove this. These are all very rough cuts. We're not actually going to do any finalizing cuts in the first stages of marking things off. We're also going to do this side. We're going to keep this detail, and we're going to go down at this corner and keep this, and then cut across. So I'm going to get the Dremel and cut this out. Actually, we're going to keep that, so we're going to cut around. Hold on one sec. I have a reference here, and I'm going to see if I can copy some stuff off of this. Don't mind this. This is going to be a video on its own soon. So actually, instead of doing that there, we're going to come off like right here. We'll find out how to make that cool flow. So the tools I like to use for integrating consist of a hacksaw, a Dremel with a cutting bit, snippers or wire snippers, and X-Acto knives. This is just for base cutting. And then finer details include the Dremel again, X-Acto knife, that's what I meant. X-Acto knife, and trying to think. But yeah, I think that's basic tool stuff. We're gonna do some basic cuts, some finer cuts, and then we'll get to hot gluing stuff, and then we'll cut it for this video, because I want this to be a super long video. So yeah, let me cut these bits off, and we'll also go into some internal dremeling stuff and some filing. Alright, once you're done, it should look like this. got the strife all cut up, and we got the raven cut up. So we're going to turn our attention away from the strife real quick, talk about the raven. So looking in here, obviously a strife is not going to just slide in because there's a lot of, yeah, a lot of issues. So what we're going to do is kind of crack open this. It's very sticky thumb well, for whatever reason, and stick this out. And we're going to line up about why I cut where I'm going to cut. So, if we look at this, we're going to try and keep the angle here and the angle up here. We're going to try and make it so that lines up. And when that lines up, we can make sure that it's straight. And make sure that it's cohesive. Now, since we want to keep these details, we're also going to need to maybe carve some of this out, but we'll see what happens. We'll also probably cut this down and cut a lot of this out. Now you can choose to not do this route. If you were not to do this route, you just continue this line here and then go down, and you'd probably want to cut this off anyway for the battery door, because we're going to keep the battery door on this strife. With this guy, you can do the same thing, just cut this off. You can choose to do the stupid cut if you want to do that, or you can keep this. So I'm going to do a lot of trimming, and I'm going to see if I decide to keep this. I might just not keep it because I don't want to make this too hard for myself. So I'm going to come back when I have everything lined up but not glued in. So I will be back in a couple hours. For you, it'll be seconds. And just like that, boom. So as you can see, I did some messing up there, but over here isn't too bad. But what we're going to do, actually, is remove some of this stuff. I'm going to do this off camera, because it's going to be very tedious. I'm going to remove this to where this stops, and we're going to fill that later. And this is to the edge, and it looks pretty good. And it's not like this, or like this. And for this one, we're going to keep the logo, the nameplates. We're going to remove all the warning labels and such. And the handle's going to be filled. This is all going to be epoxy putty, and maybe some DevCon around here. So I'll get back to you when all that work is done, as in another video. So this was the first part of the video. I don't want this to get too long. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you learned at least something, and hopefully this was at least helpful in some other lights as well. This is typically how I integrate, especially when it comes to new things. I like to size things up a lot more, and it usually takes a lot longer. So I will see you guys later, and you have a great rest of your day. See you later.